My guest today is Ian Koniak. Ian is the founder and president of Ian Koniak Sales Coaching, but actually before he launched his coaching business, he was a strategic account executive at Salesforce for 9 years. And while there, he had, I think it was like 42 months of consecutive quota achievement. He was awarded as a top producing rep in the company. And he also shares today his story of how he transitioned out of hardware into software sales. My favorite part about today's conversation, though, is Ian opens up, Ian and I both actually open up on some of the more stressful elements of working as a SaaS seller. I think this is something I probably haven't focused on enough during the show. Ian talks about how his identity and his self-worth was wrapped up around the results that he produced. And ultimately that caused him to have sort of a breakdown where he decided to shift his focus, launch his coaching business, and now he's helping reps succeed in their personal lives as well as their professional lives by being the best they can be. So without further ado, please welcome Ian. All right, Ian, we are live. Welcome to the SaaS Sales Players.
Let's go, baby.
All right. So you and I were just talking before we went live here, and I had asked you to tell us a little bit about where you got started. Where did it all begin for Ian in the SaaS sales industry specifically?
Well, the SaaS sales industry started 9 years ago at Salesforce, and it's not as exciting as my entry into sales because I think I should share that first, and then I'll talk about SaaS sales. But I was a teacher before I was a salesperson. A lot of people don't know that. I taught English in Venezuela. I was traveling the world, taking pictures, traveling to national parks. And sales was not what I thought I would ever be doing. And I ended up falling in love there. My visa expired, had to move away from my girlfriend, had no money, no job, no girlfriend. And basically was like, I was super determined to like be with this woman. And so sales had this unlimited income earning potential. And in the tender age of 23 years old, I living with my parents, I said, well, how am I going to get her here? So the only way to get her from Venezuela to the US was to get a student visa, which required me paying for her college, saving enough money, not only to bring her here and support both of us, but putting her through school, because that was the only visa they were giving. So I had to make a certain amount of money. And I went to a sales career fair, and they said there was a flyer there. It said 50,000 year one, 75,000 year two, 100K plus year three. And I'm like, what do I have to do? I'll do anything you say. And they said, you just need to do what we tell you to do, and we'll guarantee. It said guaranteed on this flyer. And so that was my entry into sales. And there's a lot of lessons in there, but when you make it about like your goals and why you're doing something, you don't have to pump yourself up. You don't have to go and like try and force yourself and self-motivate, because it's bigger than you, right? And I've taken that with me, every year I try and reset like why I'm doing what I'm doing and make it bigger than me and find that greater cause. Because I realize that when you have a really strong why, you're always going to figure out a way how that drive, that optimism, that determination. I wasn't questioning, do I make this cold call? I was just doing the activity. And that's how I learned sales. And 10 years later, I had progressed within Rico. I had gotten all the awards and kind of risen the ranks. I was running a team of 80 people. I had 10 sales managers and 70 AEs under me, and we were doing about 60 million a year. And I was making about $250,000 a year. Okay. And now that might sound like a lot for a lot of people, but for me, I was running a $60 million business. And I read this little article in Forbes magazine about a company called Salesforce, where the average enterprise AE was making over 300,000. And it was just this eye-opening moment where I'm like, what am I doing? I'm in sales, but am I in the right sport? Right. I'm playing a sport, but is it the right sport? So it's like going from, professional rugby to the NFL, right? I went to, I was determined to get into Salesforce, and, got rejected a bunch of times, finally got in, and the rest is history. I had a run there, and I had to transition from that like transactional to a more strategic selling, and that was its own experience. But that's how I got into SaaS sales specifically, is I saw that article and I realized, wow, I can make a lot more. If I'm going to do sales and work this hard, I might as well do it in a SaaS company, and the best one. And that got me kind of like exposed to this other world of high impact selling, enterprise selling at Salesforce. So it was quite the journey.
So did you go from, it sounds like you ran a team at Rico. You went from being a leader back to a contributor at Salesforce.
That's right. So I was 5 years as an AE at Rico, then 5 years working my way up, sales manager, branch manager, general manager. Then I was director of sales when I left. And then I had to go back to be an IC at Salesforce because they wouldn't take me as a leader by good reason. I had no sales experience. I had no SaaS experience.
SaaS experience, yeah.
And so they literally, no matter what my accolades were, no matter how it was really stupid of them, frankly, but I had a lot of people that rejected me and they said, I don't care, you don't have the experience. And I tell people, never hire for just experience, hire for drive, hire for optimism, hire for charisma, hire for things because a good person who's smart and, driven is going to figure out a way to win. And luckily I had a boss the one who did end up hiring me, who knew about copiers, who knew what that took, and he gave me a chance. And I'm forever grateful for that chance because he wasn't just looking at the resume, he was looking at the person. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I made the same transition a few years ago. I was in a, kind of middle management sales leadership role. And I just decided just for the financial upside, and two, because I felt like I wanted to hone in on the skill of selling before I got too far down a management track. So I made the leap from sales manager back into a contributor seat, and I'm still here as a sales contributor. Yeah. And now when I think about jumping back into a sales leadership seat, the thing that drew me to leadership is making an impact on people. And now that I'm doing the podcast, I feel like I have a bigger chance at making an impact than I did even as an individual manager. But I always think it's interesting to hear from people who have made that transition from being a sales leader back to honing in on the craft. And it sounds like you obviously spent a bunch of time at Salesforce, not only learning about the SaaS industry, but honing in on your craft and how to be more strategic about your deals. And I have a lot of listeners who are, and I love your story also about coming from being a teacher and then moving into sales and having that drive to get into sales. Because I have a lot of listeners out there who are trying to transition from another industry, or maybe they're selling now, but they're not in the SaaS category. So I think your story is going to really resonate with a lot of my audience out there who is in a similar situation. Great.
Yeah. It's cool to hear that you went from leadership to IC, because that's what I did. I thought I might go back into leadership. I didn't. I ended up being at Salesforce for 9 years before I left to do my own thing. And it was always like, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm learning, trying to get better. As long as you're growing and learning, you don't need to move, right? And you could be a career salesperson that makes, frankly, way more money than a leader, and determine your own hours, determine your own schedule, do it on your terms, work abroad. I have a good buddy who's working in Italy and Santorini and Greece, and like selling, and he made President's Club. And he's like, I'm like, man, dude, he's my age, he's 42. And I'm like, are you going to settle down at some point? But he's happy as a clam. He's really, so you can do that in sales. You can't do that necessarily in leadership. It's a lot harder when people depend on you. So I think it's about knowing what you want, right?
Yeah.
And if you're okay, like, shit, nothing's wrong with being a career salesperson. I think it's a great career for many people. And that was the choice I made at Salesforce for 9 years. I got recruited a couple times to be a VP of sales there, and I just had no interest in it, frankly.
That's fantastic. I want to actually drill into something. You had said that it took you I can't remember your exact words, but it took you a little bit to get in the door at Salesforce. Oh, yeah. And I know from my experience, and we'll use Salesforce as the example, but I think your advice would probably apply to someone who's also trying to get into, I'm trying to think of another similar category. Maybe they want to get into Oracle or, Microsoft or something like that. What advice would you give someone who's trying to get in at one of the big successful SaaS platforms out there that's well-known, like Salesforce? How did you finally get your way into the door?
I mean, one is be persistent, treat it like a sales cycle, right? So I was rejected 3 times before I finally got the opportunity to come in. And that's the first thing. A lot of people give up after 1 or 2 interviews. I mean, you just got to keep going. Just like your dream client is going to say no a bunch of times,
right.
You have your heart set on a certain company. In my case, I was only looking at Salesforce. It's funny because what I did when I got into Salesforce after a couple interviews, I'm like, man, these guys are like, really, really hard to get into. And, I was like, maybe I should look elsewhere. So I ended up going to Oracle. It's funny you mentioned that. And I got a job offer at Oracle. Well, the minute that I took that job offer and I showed it to Salesforce, I say, hey, if you guys don't make a move, I'm going to Oracle. And by the way, you're going to miss out. And, I showed him that job offer, and it's amazing how that changed everything. They say, well, if he's good enough for Oracle, then, we're going to, just because I don't think they wanted me to go to Oracle. I think they wanted to beat Oracle and getting me. And that changed everything. So I would say, number one, persist, but leverage, look at other companies and get to the industry you want. It doesn't have to be your dream company. You could always transfer over if you need to. And if Salesforce wouldn't have taken me, I would have taken that job at Oracle. And yeah, I was willing to do that. But by having that offer letter in hand, it gave my negotiation power. It gave me a lot more leverage. And that's how I ended up doing it. So don't just be so laser focused on one place that you don't also get other options, right? It's better to get out of the industry you're in if you're trying to go to a new industry than not to, do it at all because you're only stuck at one company.
Yeah, that's super badass. I haven't heard that good of a story about using that kind of leverage, and I love that. And I probably need to do more of that in my career.
It was the offer letter. They literally took the offer letter and they upped it by 10%. And, they gave me the better signing bonus. It was a very powerful, very powerful. It's like a customer, right? If they have two vendors they're competing with and they have another quote and it's half your cost, yeah, you certainly could justify the value. But if it's pretty similar, you're probably going to try and meet them and have a conversation. They're not doing that so they could buy the other company. They're doing that so they can work with you and get a better deal. So it's the same thing with any job, right? It's if they know you have other offers in hand and you're going to make a move, then maybe their 3-month or 2-month evaluation process and hiring process could be sped up. And that's what happened with Salesforce. They literally accelerated where they normally do this big panel and they do this, big presentation. I didn't have to do any of that because I had Oracle. So I literally had one meeting with my RVP, another one with the SE manager, and then I met a guy named Larry Schertz, he's at a different company now, who's the AVP. We had lunch, he grilled me, and I ended up getting an offer letter a couple of days later. So it was really a streamlined process once I got that Oracle letter in hand.
That's awesome. No, that's incredible. So tell us, I know it's probably hard to sum it up in a couple of sentences. And before we dive into some of what you're doing right now, I want to just hear some of the big things you learned in the 9 years that you were at Salesforce. What were major milestones, learnings, especially learnings that brought you to where you are today, being self-employed, working on coaching? What are some of those big, takeaways?
I think the biggest one is that transactional selling doesn't translate to enterprise selling. In copiers, I was very good because it was very predictable. It was, do this much activity, set this much meetings every week. This will lead to this opportunity, number of opportunities. This leads to this many sales. It was a science. And in Rico, I hit my number 42 months in a row. And it was by following a formula of do 2 and set 2 every day. Do 2 appointments, set 2 appointments every day. That means you'll have 10 a week, 4 opportunities a week. Even if you suck, close one of those deals, 1 a week, you're going to be at quota. And it's true. And it worked. And it was very predictable. Well, you try to take that same methodology or same science to a enterprise sales. And I did that my first few years. Now, interestingly enough, I got lucky my first year at Salesforce. I took that same, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna hustle, and I'm going to just outwork everyone. And I took it to Salesforce, and I ended up, after 16 emails to one CIO, I ended up closing a 7-figure contract my first year at Salesforce and finishing rookie of the year. And I'm like, man, this works. I can out hustle. Fuck all these people that are just like these staunchy enterprise AEs, 20-year veterans. I came and got rookie of the year and made everyone say, yeah, hustle works. Well, here's the funny thing. Years 2, 3, and 4 at Salesforce, I took that same approach and I missed my quota 3 years in a row. And so I had been the top guy for my whole career. And I thought outworking everyone would be the solution. And frankly, it led to burnout. It led to addiction. It led to my self-esteem really getting, when your whole identity is grounded in being a top performer and, really priding yourself in your results, and you miss 3 years in a row, you can imagine what that does to your self-worth. And unfortunately for me, I didn't cope in healthy ways. And, it brought me to a place where on January 31st of 2000, 2017, actually, it's 5 years ago now. I looked in the mirror and I just missed my quota for the third year in a row. And I screamed at the top of my lungs. And it was like an out of body experience. My head was pulsing and I was in so much pain. And I said, I'm never going to feel this way again. I'm never going to fucking put myself through this, where I barely missed my quota. That year I missed it by one deal, and that deal was supposed to come in and it didn't. It was like my entire idea of like what mattered was just hitting quota. And I realized I had to make some major changes, not only to how I sold, but like to how I thought. And so I started, I joined a personal development program, and it was called Epic Impact. I spent over $20,000 of my own money to go into deep personal development. I hired a coach, and I really started making some major shifts in how I was selling. And it wasn't so much hard work, grind, numbers driven. It was more about quality. It was more about other people solving problems, helping, versus me. So the big shift, I would say, if I had to sum up kind of what I learned in transitioning from more transactional to more strategic selling, is when you make it about yourself, the clients can sense that, and they're not going to want to work with you. But when you make it about other people, when you really take the time to understand what people want, to have a conversation with them and to help them get what they want through the products and services you sell, then you're going to get what you want in return. So you help other people get what they want, and you will get what you want. So I had to shift from this inward me focus to this outward you focused way of selling. And it required actually giving a fuck and caring about people and the person I'm talking to, versus looking at them as a dollar sign and as a commission check. And I think that was the work I did on myself that year. And it's amazing the results. I went from this underachiever to the top #1 enterprise AE at Salesforce that year. I went from earning $250K a year to averaging about $750K a year. I went from never making the club to making it 4 years in a row, and overachieving 4 years in a row. So, and then I'm like, man, I have to teach this. I have to help other people. And there's a few things that led to that, but it's so simple, but yet we're in such a me-centric society, and we're so focused on ourselves, and that is the source of our misery. That is the source of our pain. And frankly, that's the source of our results a lot of times when we're making it about us. And I'm hoping to shift that, because once I made that shift, everything changed. And so that's really what I would tell people that are kind of like what I learned at Salesforce, is when you have the ability to solve big problems and help people, really make it about them versus about you, and watch what happens to your income and your quota. It's going to happen naturally. Those are outcomes, right? Those are outcomes of being a good person who wants to serve and help others. So.
Wow. I have so many questions, and I want to preface by saying, and we talked about this before we went on air here. I think sometimes on my show, I tend to skew towards the positivity, the optimistic. I love this industry. I love being in SaaS sales. I love selling. I love technology. I love the financial upside, the financial freedom that it's provided my family, and the lifestyle. We talked about that, being able to have control of my schedule more so than in any other profession, I think. And, having W-2s that I never would have dreamed of in other professions, and that frankly, my folks are skeptical of still. All the same, what I probably don't do enough of on my show is talk about some of the traps you can fall into, whether that's completely wrapping your identity around your quota or your results, your production, falling into addiction, falling into, complete burnout, or having, mental health fallout from a bad year, a bad quarter, a bad month, whatever it is. Yep. And so I definitely want to spend, I'd like to spend almost the rest of this episode really on some of that stuff, because I think you're certainly qualified to speak about it. It sounds like that's the mission of your company now, is to really help teach the principles around this and get the industry out of this place where, we can fall into these kind of traps. And I'm no exception. I've personally experienced burnout. Unfortunately, my family has sometimes had to take the brunt of the stress and, the burden also. My wife calls it the Jesse roller coaster. I'm just being totally transparent here.
I love it.
And she says, you're on the Jesse roller coaster again. There's high highs and just incredibly low lows. And it's up and down, depends on the quarter, depends on the year. and every little thing gets scrutinized, and one bad conversation with a manager leads to just weeks of stress
or a customer, right?
Or a customer.
I mean, it could be anything, right?
Deal falls through, whatever it is, getting put on a performance plan. I mean, these are all realities of this industry that, again, I don't think I talk enough about. I don't think the industry talks enough about. So I'm really excited that you're dredging this up as hard as it is to have these kind of conversations, and as hard as it is to be transparent. And a guy like yourself, who's done incredibly well in the space and had a just completely decorated career, to know that you've gone through some of this stuff. And when I talk to a lot of the other elite performers that have been on the show, same kind of thing, that, you're very vulnerable to burnout. We're all overachievers. We're all trying to accomplish big things. And that puts you in a position where you can really fall into some of these traps. So talk to us a little bit about, what some of those are. How can we sort of unbundle ourselves or unwrap ourselves from, tying our persona, our personality and our happiness around just a number that's on a dashboard in ironically Salesforce.
Yeah. So there's really two questions in that question is what are the traps, and then what is the solution and the answer. And for me, it's not something that goes away, right? This is not like you're an overachiever. Even in my own business where I'm not selling someone else's, I still fall victim to the same ways of thinking. And it does start with you and how you interpret what happens to you and outside events. And that's really where the solution lies. And I'll just talk about the solution for a second.
Yeah, please.
It's a quote from Jim Rohn that I love. And he says, if you work hard on your career, you can make a great living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. And that's really not so much about making the money. It's more about working hard on yourself that I've found has been the determinant of getting the results that I could only dream of in past times. And I've been on this journey of personal development for 5 years. So I do feel like I'm equipped to talk about it. I also have been sober for 2 years, and not just from getting drunk or high, but also things that were addictive tendencies, like viewing pornography or playing video games or taking Adderall. So I was very much somebody who was running the highs and the lows and the lows. And I would escape when I felt these feelings. Let's start with the feelings, and then let's start with what it results in typically. And then we'll talk about the solution. Cause it's not easy. It's like I said, 5 years, and I still have some of these same, just today I posted on this. I've been feeling this recently. So the conversation's timely, but the common problems that I've seen in sales are, you're in an industry that generally requires a lot of discipline and requires a lot of things that, generally people don't necessarily want to do, right? So it could be prospecting, could be long detailed analysis or research, especially in enterprise selling. And a lot of the DNA of salespeople is like, they want that dopamine hit. They want that immediate gratification. It feels great to meet customers. It feels great to close deals, but that's only a small portion of what the job actually requires, right? And so what naturally happens is when you are working, and I see this, this is probably what I see most common is sales reps beat themselves up, not because of their results so much, but because they're not doing the things they know they need to do to get the results they desire. And a lot of those things are the daily activities, the daily kind of tasks that we just don't like. And a lot of it has to do with self-discipline in the consequence of not keeping your word to yourself and doing the things you know you need to do is that you generally feel out of alignment, or you feel out of integrity because you're not keeping your word, and you're giving into distractions. You're giving into things that are immediately pleasurable, like going on your cell phones, browsing social media, going on your finances, working on your side hustle, because those things feel really, really good. But then there's this direct conflict within yourself because you're not doing the things you know you need to do. I coach salespeople, and I see this more often than not, right? Where people are not unhappy with their results so much as they're unhappy with their efforts. Okay. And when you're unhappy with your efforts and you're not showing up, the best version of yourself, you're going to beat yourself up. And you're also going to carry that stress with you at night because you're feeling like there's a bunch of stuff in your head you needed to do that you didn't do. And now your family is suffering because you're not fully present with them. So this by far is the most common thing I see. And the answer is really simple. It's foster self-discipline and get organized, understand what the key things you need to do is, create a system of actually personal accountability, and execute on what you say you're going to do every day. And it's a daily discipline, right? That generally people will feel better about themselves when they're trying, when they're knowing, when you know you're doing all you can, you're going to feel better about yourself when you go to bed at night, and you're also going to be able to let go when you walk through the door and or with your family. You can be more present. And I just think that's more common than anything. And it's what you alluded to earlier. Yeah. And the answer is knowing you're doing all you can. It sounds really simple, but that's the truth. And that is the most powerful thing you can do, is try your best. John Wooden has a great quote on what success is. And he says, success is inner peace and self-satisfaction, knowing that comes from knowing you're doing all you can to be the best, to be the best version of yourself. It's something like that, but it's inner peace and self-satisfaction. So if you have inner peace and self-satisfaction, you're not going to have mental health issues, whether it's anxiety or depression or addiction, right? Those are coming from feeling like you're inadequate. So I think that answers probably a lot of the other things, but some of the symptoms I see and some of the things I see is burnout. I see depression. I see addiction. I see people that are just feeling like bad about themselves, and that leads to a shame spiral, right? And I think, again, just the solution, there's many solutions, right? There's many solutions, but before you can get to a place where you're even disciplined enough and you're committed enough to do it every day, you have to be mentally fit. You have to be mentally strong. So certain things you can do, certain tools are what I rely on for mental toughness and mental strength. And I'll list out some of these tools. Yeah, please. But I very much relied on coaching and mentorship that first year in 2017 when I spent that money. I mean, I was all in, right? I was saying, look, my way is not the right way. So I think it starts with humility of realizing, that maybe you're not like the best thing since sliced bread. And you have to have that awareness and that humility to go and get help. So that's my number one recommendation, is get help in the things you need help with. So I went and got help. I got a coach. I joined a mastermind. I very much was focused on self-improvement, but not on my own. I wasn't just listening to books and podcasts. I was part of a group of people that were committed to also really, really getting better. So the more you can look into those type of masterminds, or, maybe it's therapy. If you struggle with addictions, that's something for me. I had to get a therapist. Every year for the past 5 years, since I've been on this journey, I've had somebody or some organization helping me that I've invested my money in to get help. When I got sober, I joined a 12-step group. I got a sponsor. I went to therapy for specifically the addiction that I struggle with. So that was, that is the solution, is learn from the people who walked the path and have come out on the other side stronger, right? That's why I quit my job and I'm helping people now, because I want to see people. It's not so much to, I'm so happy for you because you made $1 million. That's not for me what fills my cup. It's more about seeing people overcome their demons, their shadows, their limiting beliefs, and be the best version of themselves. That to me, if I could spend my life doing that, I would be super happy if I can inspire people to break through. So I hope that answers your question, because there's a lot of nuggets in there that we can dive into, and I want to stop talking because all day about this.
If you do any prospecting with LinkedIn, you have got to go get set up with Surf. That's SURFE. It's a tool you can use to add new contacts to your CRM system directly from LinkedIn in seconds. I'm using it every single day. I add contacts, follow my deals, keep track of notes, and it ends up saving me a bunch of time on prospecting and outreach, which means I can spend more time moving my deals along. The data is always 100% accurate, since I don't have to copy and paste all the fields over from each and every contact that I want to put in my CRM. Instead, Surf does that all automatically with just one click in about 60 seconds. The team over at Surf has put together a very special offer for fans of sales players. There's a link down in the show notes, and you can use the promo code JWSurf5. Don't forget the E at the end of Surf. That's JWSurf5 for 5% off your first year. Don't spend another minute doing things manually. Go get set up with Surf. No, this is, I was just soaking up the passion and honestly making some notes for myself because again, I struggle. I think one of the things I struggle with and maybe some of the folks out there listening do too is in the moment, the in the moment, pressures or stressors that happen.
Yeah.
Certainly it sounds like you've got some great tools and frameworks for stepping back and saying, I need help, I need therapy, I need coaching. What are some of the things that you do in the moment? Let's say you had a deal that you thought was going to close and then the prospect writes and says, hey, you know what? Never mind. We're going to go with a competitor or we're going to stick with the status quo. And the inclination I know sometimes on my part is to get incredibly angry or shout out or take it out on somebody or, lay down on the ground in the office and just put your head in your hands. What are some things that you do in the moment when big stressors occur?
So I think you need to distinguish what's external versus what is internal. Okay. In other words, right now there's a lot going on. There's Russia just invaded Ukraine. There's obviously coronavirus. The world is divided still, it's just kind of fucked up. And there's a lot of people around us and a lot of chatter and noise in the news. For me, I'm reading a book right now, which I'd recommend for a lot of people. And it's called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And it's really, really good. I'm loving every page. I think I'm probably an hour into the 5-hour Audible version of it. But one of the things they were talking about today is like, you can't control what happens around you, but you can control how you respond to it. And taking ownership of your response and realizing, I'll give my wife as an example. I love her to pieces. She's my rock, but she's with the kids all day. She's a full-time mom and our kids are young and it's stressful. My son, is 18 months and he's always, he's a busy age. He's in an early terrible twos. He's accelerated into that very quickly. My other son is on the autism spectrum and, he needs help and it's just a lot to manage for her. So sometimes I'll walk in the door, okay, and she will complain and not really complain, but she'll vent because I'm an adult that she's seeing for the first time after being with the kids all day. And my previous reaction to this was to shut it down and try and fix it and really, okay, do this, do that. And it's like, that's how a lot of men work. And, prescriptive advice. But it was like, I let that ruin my mood. If I was coming in all happy and then I hear her, I'm like, well, what's going on? And again, this isn't meant to knock my wife at all. This isn't every day, but on the days when she had a hard day, I let that affect me. And what I've really, really been working on, I would say, over the past maybe 6 months, especially, is how I respond to situations. And not even just how I respond, but you could feel yourself getting emotionally triggered. It's a body state that changes when you have these triggers that, whether it's a customer call, whether it's someone who says something online, whether it's your family saying certain things, everyone has triggers that it triggers a physical state. In the natural response is it's a split second between the time you feel triggered and how you respond, which could be yelling, it could be shutting someone down, it could be, just storming out the door. I mean, and this is where the magic happens is, your awareness of your state and then taking a pause between your reaction and working on, okay, I'm not going to let this create this response. This is this person's issue. So in the case of my wife, again, changing that story from, wow, she's ruining my day to, oh my God, she's having a tough time. I need to be a good husband and listen and support her versus like fixing and try and like make it about me. I mean, that's the key, right? So fundamentally, awareness of what triggers you and awareness of your responses and capturing yourself in those moments when you feel the physiology change, and instead of yelling or, because I had to work on this because I had a temper and I yelled. And the thing I went to, again, getting help. I went to a retreat for a men's retreat specifically to help me with some things that I was still working on. And one of them was my temper. And what I walked away from that retreat was, and thank God it hasn't happened, but I walked away with this mantra, and it was, I'm going to fight for my family, not with my family.
Them. Was that retreat? Did you go and like get away? Was I imagine in person, or?
It was, yeah. It was on a ranch in Texas, and
wow.
It was literally meant to let out all of your aggression and build up what was bottling inside. And we were shooting, throwing axes and boxing each other. It was intense. It was really out of my comfort zone. I'm not a boxer, but I was put in a situation where I fight someone getting cracked in the ribs, broke a rib. It was wow. Intense. And anyway, it was a 4-day like immersion. So I'm big on like experiences and going away and like really resetting and, finding what I'm looking for. And what I found in that, that was what I walked away with. And now it's like my son, who I used to give a spanking if I was upset if he didn't listen. I haven't touched him I haven't spanked him. It's like, yeah, sure. Once in a while, I might lose it or react, but I'm not going to fight with my family. I love my family. So we're all works in progress, but I think fundamentally in those moments, taking a pause and realizing this has nothing to do with me. I think that's really important, because a lot of the stuff we fret over, we respond to, it's like it's the stories we're telling ourselves and the thoughts about those things, rather than, because one person could be my best friend and your worst enemy, right? And we could say completely different. So it's literally how we interpret that thing in the story we tell ourselves that then determines our feelings about it, our emotions, which then determines our reactions or our behaviors, right? So changing the story, this is deep work, and it takes a lot of practice, but that's where the magic happens. And for anyone who is leaning in a little bit on this, Stoic philosophy is really, really powerful. I mentioned The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. There's another book, Ego is the Enemy. There's another one, is The Obstacle is the Way. Ryan Holiday is a great author here. I'm really getting into some of this now. And there's another guy I'll recommend, Chris Doris, who does a daily dose email. He's a mental toughness coach, and it's all Stoic related type philosophy. And it's like, we can't determine what happens to us. We can determine our reactions to it. And taking that ownership and not having this victim mindset of like, you did this to me, you made me feel this way, like is what mental toughness is. And it's absolutely doable, but it takes a lot of practice, because we're wired the way we're wired over our entire lives getting us to this point. So we have to kind of dewire or rewire, I should say, our brains to think differently. And like I said, it takes a lot of investment in yourself, and it's forever. You're forever doing the work. It doesn't go away.
I think sellers, especially because we're passionate, you have to be passionate to stay in this industry and keep grinding along and working with customers. You got to like find that energy from within. And that usually comes from passion. But that passion sometimes comes from emotion. It's really funny. I've worked with a lot of, I've been a lot of my career in very early stage startups. So, unlike being at a big company like Salesforce or Oracle, I've been at, a 10-person startup where I was the only sales rep on the team, working with technical founders and co-founders. And something that I've observed, a couple of the founders that I've worked with are incredibly stoic people. And they can just pile on this immense amount of stress, because when you're the founder of a 10-person tech company and you're trying to go raise a Series A or whatever it is, and you have, a couple of customers and one of them wants to churn, one of them didn't pay their bill, something broke in the code, you've got to hire, you got to find office space, you're scaling. Like, these are just incredible stressors. And something that I have observed, and there's a couple of particular founders that I've worked with that come to mind. I won't mention them by name, but I've just noticed that they're incredibly stoic. They can take it all in and just say, it is what it is. They're so confident in their ability to find a solution too, that they don't let the emotional part get carried away. Whereas I think myself as a seller, I'm like, oh shit, we're going to lose this customer and this is going to happen and this deal's not going to close. And if that doesn't happen, then we're going to spiral out of control. And I think, for entrepreneurs, for founders, the stoicism really does come into play. You got to be really stoic. And it's pleasant to work with someone like that too, who's just, they can't let something like that affect them in the moment.
the difference between what you said and what the founder that you admire said is what you would view as stressful, and you're that's the story. This is stressful. That is the story. So by saying to yourself and feeling this is stressful, you create those emotions of stress, thoughts of stress, and you want to avoid it, or you want to get it away, and then you react, and you're filling your brain with cortisol. So what the Stoic and the people that practice this will do is they don't see that as stressful. They just see it as something that needs to get done. Like I tell myself the story, the stuff that I'm dealing with right now as a founder of a new company. And a lot of it, I really do not enjoy. It's things fundamentally that are out of my element. Things like setting up a pension, which I've had to go back and forth of a 200-page document, getting certain things built for my course and my platform, website design. There's things in here. And yes, I can outsource some of that, but you still need to be involved in the oversight. And these are things that, I can go on podcasts all day and I can coach people all day and be very happy. But if I'm going to scale and serve to the extent I want to, there's certain things, infrastructure I need to set up. So how I find myself interpreting or resisting these things that are not fun, and I'll just go on LinkedIn or I'll go do the thing. And it's the same exact pattern in sales. It's nothing different. So this work doesn't change, but there is a reason I'm able to go in. And there's a couple other, again, tools and solutions I want to get into on this, besides just being aware, is I'm able to realize that these things are just things. They're not stressful events. It's my thoughts that are causing them to be stressful events. My wife would not stress about some of the things I'm stressing about. Other people might love it, right? So it's really just my story and interpretation of like, this isn't me. I shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. So that's a key. Another thing to focus on is, when you put all of your worth in your achievement or your performance, you're neglecting all the great things about you that have nothing to do with your performance. So if you can say, I am an honest person, I work hard, I practice, my values, I love my family, and I'm a good provider, right? If you literally can measure your self-worth in other things, knowing that they are frankly way more important than how much money you make or how many sales you get, way more, not even comparable. The integrity of a person and how they show up. Like I've had to learn this the hard way, but I thought I was a great fucking person because I was selling a lot and I was a badass. And meanwhile, I was empty and hollow inside. You know what makes me a good person? Opening up to my wife about my demons, working on myself, being vulnerable, helping other people, truly, practicing my faith, being honest, right? These are things that before I didn't value as much. And now I'm like, I can rest assured knowing like, hey, I'm living my truth. And, it might not be, the same income, or it might not be like when I put all my worth in, I need to make $1 million my first year. And I look at sales, like it brings out the worst in me. But when I just focus on what I can control and realizing I'm doing my best and I'm doing enough and not like being too hard on myself, I think practicing that grace is also something that we need to do. And then the other thing, which is really effective in dealing with like these mental health, there's the moment, but before you can even get to a place where you are able to stop yourself in the moment, there's things you can do to lower your stress in general and make yourself feel good. I think Brandon probably talks about this too. Which is, take care of your health, right? So for me, getting sleep,
sleep is big.
What I eat, exercising, regularly. I do distance running. I know that when I ran 4 miles this morning and I hadn't been running because I had COVID over the past about a month ago, and it's been, I've been short-winded afterwards. I just haven't been in a position to do distance running. And the feeling I had coming out of that long distance run today, and it's just physical, right? When you can get your physiology in a state where you are better equipped to handle events that you might perceive as stressful, they're just easier, right? So that's for me is so important, is having a morning routine that I practice consistently. And that helps a lot, because by the time you get into the day, and it's not like you're waking up and starting with emails and lumping, you've already gotten some wins under your belt. You've already exercised discipline to go on that run, to work out, in my case, I take a cold shower, after a workout. I do things that are kind of hard for many people, but I'm doing it to foster self-discipline and also to put myself in a peak performance state where I can go and take on the many, many challenges which present themselves every single day.
Do you, I imagine you don't do this. This is one of the current demons that I'm trying to slay is you jump out of bed and you check work email or SMS or WhatsApp or wherever you're getting business related messages through. I imagine you're the kind of person that doesn't do this. I know Brandon, and talking to guys like Brandon and Jamal, they don't do this because, to your point, you need to structure your day so that you have a couple of wins under your belt. And if you jump out of bed, open up your email app, you become reactive the rest of the day because it's just opening yourself up to all the fires you got to put out that day. You're not, taking any time to reflect on the day before. You're not taking any time to develop a routine. I guess the question is, did you ever,
a very leading question here.
Yeah. Did you ever do that? Do you do this, or did you do this? And did you break this habit? Talk to me a little bit about that one specifically, because I think that's one a lot of us struggle with.
I think the phone in general is dangerous first thing in the morning. I think it's very easy. It might not even be email. And yes, I do struggle. I don't check work email in the morning, but I do check LinkedIn. I definitely have channeled my addictions into healthier behaviors, but I still go on LinkedIn too much. That's kind of, and again, I get all my business from there. You probably found me from LinkedIn and in some capacity to be on this podcast. So it is in equivalent in that sense, right? I'm getting DMs and stuff, and it is business related. But I put it down, I'm not checking for a long time. It's usually for a couple minutes, and then I'll okay, let's go. And I'll basically, what I'll typically do is I'll put my running clothes out or my workout clothes out the night before. I'll move them to the other room. I'll move them I won't even be in my bedroom. I'll move them to the living room, and I just go, right? I have my protein shake, which I'm holding right here.
Nice.
I go on my run. I do my shower. I plan my day. I do my prayer, my daily prayer, my gratitude. And I've been doing it for a long time. I've had this for a while. I would say in the beginning, it takes a good month or two before you can really form new habits. But for me, that's kind of the norm now. I notice it when I don't do it. I notice when I just jump into the day. And if I want to fix how I feel, for me, it's really simple. Fix how I start my day. I'm going to be journaling now. That's something I'm going to be putting into my routine a little more, just to get back. Cause I know the big, one of the big takeaways for mental health and for stress and, any kind of issues that might be common in sales burnout is a lot of times we'll let our emotions determine our actions. And because we don't feel good, then we don't take the actions that are going to make us feel good. And so it's kind of a spiral. But what I do is I flip that, right? And Tony Robbins talks a lot about this, but he says actions create the emotions. And it's so true. It's when we are feeling bad and then we go on YouTube for 2 hours we don't feel any better. But if we're feeling bad and we go and actually take that feeling and say, I'm still going to do what I need to do. I'm not going to give in to this, this negative behavior or actions that are going to make me feel worse. I mean, then we're going to feel better. So action is creating the motion. So when I feel bad, I will literally go talk to my wife. I'll take a walk. I will call a friend. I'll go on a run. I will work. I'll do things that get me in motion so that then the positive emotions are created. And that's how I think do it on kind of a regular basis is you just have to be aware of how you're feeling and know when to, you got to know what those things are that make you feel better. And you got to be aware when you're getting away from how you normally feel your best. So I would say those are key things to really take with you is get into action and your emotions will follow.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time here. So one last question. I'm curious your thoughts on this, and I think there's different perspectives here. From I'm taking away that in your philosophy, the industry, the SaaS sales industry, is probably not going to change some of the, dare I call them, hustle culture elements to it, or sort of imposing this ideology that your self-worth is tied into your selling performance. And I think your approach is very much that the rep needs to take charge of, the rep or the professional needs to take charge of their own mindset, their own stories, and change that from within. Whereas I want to say Brandon Fluharty probably has more of a mindset of, we need to try to, rage against the machine or rage against the industry and force, more resources for mental health. But I'm curious, like, your thoughts. Is this an industry problem, or is this personal mental health problem?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
But I don't think the industry is going to, you have to remember, I mean, I can go a couple more minutes, till 10:05.
Awesome.
I just
Cool.
pushed my call because this is important.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like, you're choosing to be in sales.
Mm-hmm.
You're choosing a career that you are measured. Your job is to hit your quota. It's not to be a good person. All the stuff I'm talking about is like what makes you feel good. It comes from within, but the job you're signing up for and maintaining, even me being an entrepreneur and selling training and coaching, I still have to sell. I still have to, make, support my family. So fundamentally, when you are in a job that requires you to generate revenue, there is going to be pressure from your company and from your manager if you are not doing your job. Okay. That is really, you can't expect sales organizations not to have quotas or not to hold teams accountable. Right. That's not healthy. That's not what sales is. Okay. Now, should they give resources to mental health? Absolutely. Should they make more awareness of it? Absolutely. Should managers give a damn about their reps and not just look at them as a number? Yeah, that's like the number one thing they should do. So people want to work hard for you versus like being scared every time they see your name on the phone coming up. So I think there's a lot companies can do to give a damn about their people and their mental health, but that doesn't negate the fact that you're going to have a quota and you're in a job where you're signed up to deliver. And if you don't deliver, you might lose your job. That's what your choice is. So take ownership. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think fundamentally it's knowing that you're choosing this. And if you're going to be in this industry, you would best find ways to cope with stress and to take care of yourself, because there's going to be more ups and downs inevitably with having a career in sales. And it's all about equipping yourself to be able to, to respond and to thrive in that environment versus letting it overpower you and burn you out. So everything I talk about is about on the personal side, but it doesn't mean that companies can't do more to help their team. But I don't, like, people say, well, I ask me, like, well, what are you going to say? Don't have quotas or, don't have leaderboards? And absolutely not. I'm a huge fan of that, because I think sales, there needs to be accountability. It's not a communist industry where everyone's created equal and, we're all getting equal pay. You go into sales because you want to be compensated and rewarded for your performance. But don't complain about having, an industry. You don't have to be in this industry if you don't want some of the stresses. Instead of complaining or saying this sucks and my manager and all this stuff, like, look in the mirror and think about, take some ownership over how you're responding or how you're choosing to let it affect you, and realize that this has nothing to do with you. It has to do with your industry. It's sales. So I hope that answers your question, because I don't think it's like rage against the machine. It's, the machine is there for a reason, and it's not a bad machine. I think it's a beautiful machine, frankly. And if you can be the best version and equip yourself to really thrive in that environment by working on yourself, none of that stuff's going to get to you. You're just going to realize, this is my job and I'm going to do what I need to do to perform my best. Right.
Yeah.
Don't blame the job that you chose.
No, that's great. I agree with that. I think we should change parts of the industry. Absolutely. But I think you're exactly right that
I do too. I do.
Yeah.
I do think people should care about the individual. I do think they should make it a fun place to work. I think they should reward employees and recognize them. I don't think they should double your quota if you overachieve. Like, there's all kinds of things the industry can do, but like, it's not the industry's fault that that you have a target and that you're in a performance driven. That is any sales job. There's going to be some measure of success that you can be in the top 10% or you can be in the bottom, and your income is directly going to be be driven by how you perform, and in that's sales. That's the soup and nuts of it. So I don't think they can do more, but I just think there's only so much they can do is
right.
What I'm get at, right?
That's great. I love that. We've got about a minute or two left here. So I want to make sure my audience knows where to find you. Before you share how to best get in touch with you, walk us through in the 30 seconds what the elevator pitch is for your coaching services. Let's say someone out there in my audience wants to get help one-on-one with you. How do they find you? What can they expect from your coaching programs?
I help AEs transition from transactional sales to strategic sales. So if anything that you heard resonated, and that you can relate, then come my way. I also help people get over their biggest hurdle in achieving their best, performance, which is themselves, right? So empower, that's where I love to spend time, is empowering people to perform their best by looking from within and working on themselves. So it's really personal development plus sales training and strategic sales training. If you are interested in learning more, just find me on LinkedIn, Ian Koniak. You can also go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ian Koniak. I have a ton of videos out there covering everything from strategic selling skills to mindset, habits, time management, all the things we talked about. And if you're interested in my coaching program, it's a 1-year membership site. I offer online, group, and live one-on-one coaching with me. The website is untapyoursalespotential.com. That's untapyoursalespotential.com. And awesome. There's a wait list there. There's 600 people on the wait list now. So I am fortunately, by God's grace, my business is in very, very high demand, but I will get to you and I will have more capacity because I'm scaling out the program to serve more people. So get on the wait list ASAP.
Cool.
If you're interested. So that's where to find me.
And I will post some links on the show notes for everyone listening to the website, the LinkedIn, that and the YouTube channel as well. Ian, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I've taken away a lot personally that I'm going to go implement myself, and I may put myself on that wait list as well. Thank you so much for, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that wisdom with us. And thank you. I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jesse, and good luck. Thanks for having me. And I will talk to you soon. Take care, man.